This episode of Matt's Mysteries contains material that some may find disturbing. Listener discretion is advised. Thank you. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Matt's Mysteries. I'm Matt, also known as Tattooed Homer Simpson, and today we're going to discuss an island you probably won't want a vacation on. That is, unless you like sleeping next to a pseudo-army of allegedly haunted dolls. No, really. This story is part mystery, part legend, and gets a little weird. If you like water, dolls, mystery, and ghosts, then stick around because I'm going to tell you about the Island of the Dolls. Episode 5 of Matt's Mysteries. Just south of Mexico City, between the canals of Xochimilco, there lies a small island. This island was never meant to be a tourist destination. However, its dark and mysterious past has led to it becoming a hotbed for paranormal investigators, thrill seekers, and fans of all things spooky. You may be asking yourself,
Matt, what makes this place so scary?
and in response, I'll let the dolls strung up across the island tell you. Because, you see, this island has since been named La Isla de las Muñecas, which, when translated, reads the Island of the Dolls. Let me backtrack a little bit. Our story begins with the caretaker of the island, Don Julian Santana Barrera. Julian, who was a native of Xochimilco, had left his family and sequestered himself on a remote island on Xochimilco Lake. Now, the motives behind his sudden departure are unclear. However, many claim that from that point on, Julian was not of sound mind. Some speculate that he was driven by a sense of spiritual calling, a belief that the island required his protection from something, while others suggest that personal demons had haunted him, leading to his self-imposed exile. While randomly waking up one morning and abandoning your loved ones and citizen life as a whole in favor of living off the grid on a nondescript island is certainly rare and oddly specific, I'd argue that he's likely not the only human person on Earth to do so. Anyway, legend goes that one day, while tending to the various activities of caretaking for the island, Julian stumbled across a tragic and rather chilling discovery. Allegedly, he discovered the body of a young girl floating in the water somewhere around the island. Sadly, she was deceased, being found face down in the water, having passed away due to an apparent drowning. As one would likely expect, the sight of the lifeless child left Julian distraught and incredibly saddened, haunting his mental state and etching a permanent image in his mind, one that would shape both his behavior and his remaining years. Shortly after discovering her body, Julian also noticed a small doll, possibly belonging to the deceased child, floating down the canal toward the island. While we don't know for certain that this doll did indeed belong to the girl, assuming this is not necessarily out of the question, this discovery would ultimately set the stage for the legend behind the Island of the Dolls. Now, it's been called into question whether or not Julian even discovered a deceased girl, as there were no official records or witnesses to confirm the event. According to Statista.com, around 43% of the 298,759 people who have gone missing in Mexico since 1964 remain unfound. This means that a young girl absolutely could have disappeared by either running away or, sadly enough, through more nefarious means, resulting in some sort of accident that found her passing away and ultimately being found by some random man on an island. However, like I said before, no official records confirming this exist, meaning that this legend could remain just that. Despite all of this, the tale persisted, growing more elaborate with each retelling. I'd like to point out that this also makes sense, and one can look to popular myths and legends as well as their origins as a reference for a story that begins simply enough, yet has details and complexity added as the story is passed down the generations of storytellers. After retrieving the doll, Julian was said to have taken it to a nearby tree, where he hung it as a sort of sign of respect to the dead child, and also to appease her spirit. He believed that the doll would serve as a guardian of sorts, ensuring that the girl's soul could find peace. Alrighty then. However, legend goes that this was just not enough. From then on, Julian was said to have been haunted by the spirit of the girl, who tormented him relentlessly with cries and whispers carried by the wind. Now, in my research, I couldn't find any concrete information in the story regarding whether or not Julian had laid the girl to rest. However, if he did, maybe burying the doll with her may have been a better alternative instead of just hanging it from a tree. Possibly, maybe. Whatever. Driven by fear and a desperate need for redemption, Julian began hanging more and more dolls from the trees, with each one intended as an offering to calm and appease the young girl's spirit. These new dolls, with some missing limbs and others with sunken, hollow eyes, created a truly haunting tapestry, a bizarre and kind of morbid effigy that swayed in the breeze. Now, I'm sure you're all asking, how did he come into possession of so many dolls and doll appendages? I really don't know. My personal theory is that many of these horrifyingly creepy dolls were likely discarded or just lost, finding their way out of various dumps and other random litter piles, eventually ending up where all garbage and misfit consumer products end up, in some sort of water source. If that is the case, then Julian likely came across a trove of other items, though those are never specified for obvious reasons. Could you imagine if it was the island of the cigarette butt? I don't know. I just looked up the most common waste item in the ocean and decided to use that in the script. Anyway, over time, Julian became convinced that these dolls were also inhabited by the spirits of other children who had met untimely deaths, their restless souls seeking refuge on the island. To appease them, he continued the seemingly endless cycle of hanging more dolls, only to have more ghosts inhabit them. This cycle of haunting and appeasement had consumed Julian, as if the dolls had whispered demands only he could hear. According to some close to him, this frantic behavior seemed to come from seemingly nowhere, and it was believed that an unseen force had compelled him to continue this process. Was it truly the spirits of the deceased pushing him to collect and hang the dolls? Or was this his way of managing the guilt and grief he likely felt upon discovering the drowned girl's body? In any event, his actions blurred the lines between reality and delusion, leaving those who visited the island to question the true nature of his motivations. I'd also like to point you back to the beginning of this story, where Julian seemingly abandoned his past life to post up on some random island. After that decision was made, many began calling his mental state into question. I won't make light of any potential demons he may have been battling during that process or beyond. However, if he was indeed suffering from some sort of mental illness, it may also explain the influx of odd and rather frantic behavior he exhibited, as well as the voices he was allegedly haunted by. As years passed, Julian's obsession became his life's work. The island transformed into a surreal landscape where trees bore witness to his offerings, each doll telling a silent story of loss and longing. The air grew heavy with an unexplainable tension, as if the island itself had absorbed the pain and sorrow that Julian carried. Visitors to the island, drawn by the eerie tales, claimed to feel an unsettling presence, as though unseen eyes watched their every move. After decades of collecting and hanging various dolls around the island, tragedy befell Julian once more. Like the girl he allegedly stumbled upon so long ago, he too was discovered floating in the water. He had also drowned, allegedly in the exact spot where he had discovered the young girl that led to the legend we're currently covering. This mirrored death would go on to fuel the legend further, suggesting that the island's spirits had claimed him as one of their own. Alright, from a rational standpoint, if he had indeed drowned, I'd argue that his mental and possibly physical state likely played the ultimate role in his tragic passing, instead of spirits and cursed dolls. Anyway, just a thought. From this point on, the island cemented itself as a hotspot for paranormal tourists, with many visitors bringing dolls of their own as a sort of sign of respect to the deceased girl and the caretaker who had hung so many dolls in her name. Legend goes that Julian's spirit joined the girl on the island after he passed, where he remains to this day, watching over the dolls and the visitors who come seeking the island's mysteries. Those who have visited the island in the years following Julian's death in 2001 have reported a number of strange and rather terrifying experiences, which further added fuel to the already red-hot legend surrounding the island. Many paranormal investigators, including but not limited to Josh Gates with Expedition Unknown and Zach Baggins and Ghost Adventures, have braved the island, searching for tangible proof that the dolls and the island they rest on are indeed haunted. Listen, I know that a massive majority of these programs are exaggerated and sensationalize most, if not all, of the odd occurrences that take place during their runtime. They're also fun as heck to watch. With that said, the experiences witnessed on and around the island go far beyond TV shows searching for the highest viewership possible. Some have reported that the dolls will allegedly move their heads and open their eyes on their own, scanning the area and following those nearby. Their unblinking gaze is said to pierce through the bravest of souls, leaving an indelible mark of fear. Alright, Party Pooper Matt here to tell you that this may have some sort of rational explanation. Have you ever looked at a painting of a person and noticed that their eyes seemingly follow you as you move around the room? Ultimately, this is due to an optical illusion of sorts, rather than the painting being haunted. I know, it's not as fun. Many dolls, like the subjects in these paintings, look straight ahead in a perpetual gaze that their creator gave them. When looking at these paintings in particular, the painting itself doesn't change, since it's ultimately a flat surface that didn't leap off the pages of a Harry Potter novel. Again, not as fun. Our visual perception is what causes the apparent shift in eye position within the painting's subject. The way that light and shadow is fixed in the painting, if the subject is painted with linear perspective in mind, and they are painted to look at you, it will ultimately give off the appearance that its eyes follow you no matter where you position yourself in the room. Now, I understand that dolls aren't exactly flat surfaces, but maybe this phenomenon, or at least something similar to it, is why the doll's eyes and even heads appear to move and follow those passing by. Anyway, others have claimed that at night, when all is quiet, you can hear the faint whisper of the dolls communicating with one another, their voices carrying secrets of the afterlife. One particular group, on a boat near the island, claimed to have heard something calling to them from said island, which, according to legend, would likely be the dolls beckoning unlucky groups passing by the area to the island for reasons unknown. Encounters like these have left many questioning their beliefs and the boundaries between the living and the dead. Here comes Party Pooper Matt once again. Much like the eye and head movements, this may have a pseudo, sort of rational explanation. Allow me to explain. Auditory pareidolia is very similar to visual pareidolia, with the very simple distinction of hearing voices instead of, seeing Jesus in toast. The most basic way to describe it is where our brains effectively fill in the blanks when trying to guess what pattern of sound is being heard. Sometimes rather monotonous sounds like wind patterns and other background noises won't have a distinct pattern that the brain can immediately and accurately identify, and as a result, it tries to approximate the source of the sound pattern using data stored in the brain's memory. This can sometimes result in people believing that they are hearing voices when they're just not. I'd like to point out that both of my attempts at rationalizing both the visual and auditory phenomenon experienced on the island are just that, attempts. I like to consider myself a skeptic when approaching topics involving the supernatural and the paranormal, and like to search for the most rational explanations for what some people claim to be bona fide paranormal experiences. I get it, party pooper. With that said, I always welcome evidence and experiences that carry enough credibility and are uniquely bizarre and unexplainable by rational means. Because, at the end of the day, the idea of the supernatural utterly fascinates me, and I absolutely love reading stories about the variety of weird and spooky things that people have experienced throughout history. So, if you have a weird and spooky ghost story you'd like to share, don't hesitate to leave a comment. I don't really have a theory for this one. I suppose that if the island's caretaker did truly find a girl who had drowned and washed up on the island, the potential grief he may have felt could have led to the dolls eventually littering the island. Although I'd personally say that the dolls probably serve as a sign of respect for the girl, similar to how one may put flowers on the grave of a loved one. And, friendly reminder, in a lot of cases involving the paranormal, people tend to hear and see what they want to, or at least what they think they want to, if they're not outright faking certain experiences for views. And this whole seeing and hearing what you think you want to hear may at the very least explain many of the sights, sounds, and experiences people have had on or around the island. With all of that said, whether or not you truly believe in the paranormal, it goes without saying, this island is creepy as heck. There are dolls literally everywhere, hanging from trees, leaning against each other, forming a twisted and kind of macabre mosaic of long-forgotten childhoods. If dolls, not to mention creepy, dirty, half-dismembered dolls with hollow, empty eyes, don't freak you out on a subconscious level, then you possess a bravery that few can claim. Or, at the very least, a bravery I failed to capture in my personal master ball. I get it, I'm a weenie. At the end of the day, the Island of the Dolls continues to draw those curious enough to explore its allegedly haunted grounds, with each visitor adding to the island's ever-growing legend. But what do you think? Do you think there is any merit to this legend? And if so, do you think there is a possibility that the island and the dolls that call it home may truly be haunted? Thank you so much for tuning in to today's mystery. If there's a mystery you'd like me to cover, don't hesitate to leave a comment on the video. If you like what you saw and are interested in learning about more mysteries from a cartoon detective, consider subscribing to the channel. I'll post once a week and will occasionally post twice if I'm feeling extra rowdy. So get ready, because there are a lot of mysteries for me to share. Until the next one, this is Matt telling you to stay mysterious.